How you doing, man?
Hey, how's it going? How old are you?
18.
Dope. What's up?
I'm down to have a conversation about the panel or the topic.
Um, any of the prompts in particular, or are you just looking for like overall? Like, what are your thoughts?
Let's see. Let's just start with the first one. Rigid patriarchy is harmful to men's well-being.
hmm
So, are you talking about aspects of the patriarchy, or are you talking about the patriarchy as a whole?
When I'm saying rigid patriarchy, what I'm talking about is just this idea that patriarchy is the only way. Men have to be this way, women have to be this way, and we all like ought to hold to these gender role norms.
Um, just an honest question: do you believe that men and women are different innately?
Yeah.
And do you think that men are obviously way stronger than women are when it
Uh,
comes to like laborious jobs, infrastructure, roading, landscaping. Just
yeah. On average, men are physically stronger. Yeah.
so like, let's just take something, for instance, like construction, road construction.
Uh
If we
huh.
were to replace, because you said like you're not a big fan of gender roles.
So again, when I say rigid like patriarchy, I'm just suggesting that I'm talking about the people who say that everyone ought to fit this mold, right? And they're like not allowing for any flexibility for like, say, a strong woman to come take a construction role or like a weaker man to, I don't know, stay home, be a teacher, look after kids, stuff like that.
Um, I think it comes down to virtues. Men and women have a different set of virtues, and if we were to almost dismantle those virtues that men and women have, society would slowly. I don't think it would progress society as much as people think. Like, question: I'm guessing you're not really a big fan of the patriarchy.
No, I mean, like the reason again I've said rigid patriarchy is because I'm not trying to take that away from people. If
Sure.
like people out there want to have traditional marriages and lifestyles, like that's great. Like whatever people want to do, I just don't think it should be prescribed to everybody and onto society as a whole.
What would be something that you'd like to prescribe on everybody as a whole, and for a replacement of patriarchy?
So I disagree with what you said about men and women having like different virtues essentially. I would just say humans, there's virtues that humans can have that are gender neutral, such as just, emotional intelligence, wisdom in general. Um, I'm kind of blanking, but I have like a whole list of them that like being courageous again. Like, I don't think that's just a man's job to be courageous. There's plenty of
Do
women.
you believe that if men were less courageous than women, that would put women in more of harm's way? Like, imagine if there was like, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, like a pew pew incident in a large crowd, and all the men were like, "Dang, I'm just gonna wait for another man to handle it." Wouldn't you say that put
Well,
more people in danger than if like women just lost how to be courageous?
so first of all, I think that's already happening. Men and women alike. I think we in our society are so used to online engagement and social media that when incidences happen in real life, nobody knows what to do and everybody like sits back, like that whole bystander effect, right?
I do believe we do have a really bad masculinity crisis. Um, and I think it's the normalization of femininity in male spaces. Um,
See,
and
I
I know
just
that
think
might
that
be a little bit of fight back there.
like femininity and masculinity are strong. Both of them are strong in their own ways, and all humans can adopt virtues from both. Like, you can be a masculine, strong, courageous man who's also very empathetic and nurturing and emotionally intelligent. You don't need to like get rid of one to have the other.
Well, I believe like someone just being like an emotional, like in touch with their emotional side. I don't think that's more or less a feminine trait or a masculine trait. I just believe that I think men should be more out of touch with their emotions, not only because they are the protector of pretty much all things that are good, but I think when men kind of take it too far to the point where it affects society like long term, I think that's where it gets a little.
See, and like I just disagree with your description that men only are protectors, right? And again, if you or any other buddy out there, any people out there who want like a traditional family style, and there's like the woman's like, yeah, I don't want to do any protecting. All I want to do is stay home, watch the kids, whatever else. Like that's great, but that doesn't mean there aren't women out there who actually can't stand their ground and defend themselves. Like there's plenty, countless of examples in modern society and throughout history, thousands of years back, of women in the military and like all like protecting their society just as much as the men.
Yeah, what society was that?
So there's some examples of I think it was I don't know if it was Ottoman Empire or just like Persia.
Hey, patriarchal, or sorry, weren't they?
Well, I'm not. So I'm just talking about the women who joined the military. I'm not like whether they were patriarchal or not doesn't take away from the fact that there were women fighters who like helped turn the tides of battles.
Yeah, when did that ever happen in history? I'm just. I
Yeah.
mean, I just need like a.
Yeah. So let me get it. I can't
Well,
remember.
are you
Yeah.
saying there was a okay? So was there like a platoon with men predominantly, and there were some women? Like the outliers were women, or you're saying that there was a woman uh created army that
Um.
turned the
No.
tides
No.
to
No. No.
battle?
It was always like mixed. Like it wasn't like just women purely.
Oh, of course
Um.
not.
So there's an example from the Persian Empire of like women archer squads who would like be sharpshooters and turn the tides of battles, right? And like obviously these aren't like frontline like hand-to-hand combat people, but they're still affecting the battle, right? Like it's still an important aspect of the wars.
Yeah, I could agree to that because a lot of people make the contention nowadays for women to be in the army, and I just don't think that in a society where men, a lot of people think that men ought to help. They make a lot of ought claims, ought to help women when women put themselves in a situation where they could be potentially harmed. Um,
So, and I just really quick, I want to give you two more examples, and like I hope you go look into these yourselves because they're amazing stories, man. Like it's really cool to hear about these women. There's this book called Book of Queens, and it's about women in the Middle East. They lived in Afghanistan in like the cave systems there. They would smuggle women away from abusive husbands that would like, obviously you know what that means, but they would smuggle them away to these caves where the women would train them to be warriors. They rode horses and fought with pew pews. So I'm bad at the TikTok language.
yeah, dude. Who is good at it? It's hard.
Yeah, it's so stupid. I hate like if we're gonna talk about adult stuff, we should be able to say the words. It's ridiculous. But yeah, so they would fight with pew pews on horseback, and they would fight the men, the men in the Taliban, and they would win battles against men on their horses.
See, that's the thing that I think I would never make the monolithical claim that like all women don't deserve to be in like combat roles, but I would argue that like long term it wouldn't be good for society because we know that like the Taliban would. I mean, even though that did happen, they are still like around.
Right, but they also defeated
But
the
it didn't really
U.S.
fix
military,
anything.
right? Like that's not saying much if they beat that group of women's because they also beat the U.S. military.
Now, question: let's just say like we were sending you out to war, right? And or any like honestly, you can use the example for any like laborious job. Like obviously, if you were in landscaping, I've done a couple landscaping jobs. Um, you would want a crew mostly of men, only because like we're only like we're built to work that kind of stuff.
Here's what I would
We're
say, dude.
better
Like,
often. Yeah, what's up?
I would want a crew of competent people. Like, if on average that's men, fine. Like, that it is what it is. Like, I'm not gonna go purposely try to find women to fill that role. But like,
Sure.
women can fill that role. Like I've worked construction. That's used to be what I did full time. Luckily I got away from it, but there were men my age that sucked, dude. They were weak. They were sucked at
Yeah,
working.
no. So
Like, yeah,
yeah, I agree because I believe in this thing called force doctrine, and you've probably heard it before. Um,
yeah. You probably
yeah.
follow Andrew Wilson, don't you?
How'd you know? What gave it away? Is it that obvious?
Jeez. No, you seemed cooler than an Andrew Wilson follower, so I'll give you credit for that. Usually they are
Really? You're
like,
not a fan of Andrew Wilson?
dude,
Is that
usually
guy?
their followers are like, his followers are just so simpy. Like, it kind of
Really? Is it?
disgusts me.
It can't be that bad. Dude,
It
Andrew Wilson,
is, dude.
he's the goat. Okay, so
No.
anyways,
Let me tell you why Andrew's the GOAT, okay? It's because he's a great sophist. He doesn't really care about having a discussion about truth like we are right now in good faith. He cares about cornering his opponents to make them look like idiots, to make his framework look better. But it's not actually about what's true. It's about getting dunks and making his framework look better. And that's sophistry.
so I believe that like people believe like obviously me and you believe in certain worldviews, and if you can critique like do like an internal critique on somebody's worldview to a point where they are cornered and they have to think through like he's like he's very good at logic and reasoning. That's I've never seen anybody like honestly give a good refutation to any of his points. Um, but he does get mixed up in
But like,
semantics. I honestly love
yeah,
semantics. I think it's
dude,
great.
he like you probably won't notice like, and obviously I'm biased, you're biased your way, we're
Yeah.
both biased, but like um the way he does these semantic traps and whatnot, like he always finds a way to avoid the questions being put onto him and defending his worldview. And he's always finds a way to constantly attack and put people in the corner, which again, it's a good debater. I'm not like he is kind of a goat for a reason, but it's not because like he's got the truth and the meaning. It's because he's good at rhetoric and like dunking on opponents. That doesn't mean
Sure.
you got the truth.
So, I mean, let's get into like force doctrine real quick because like that has something to do with the patriarchy and why the
Um,
patriarchy can never be replaced.
Hold up. I'm down, but I kind of wanted to wrap up what we were just talking about. We got
Yeah.
distracted. Because we were talking about like, who would you want, a group of men or a group of women, like in
Yeah.
landscaping or whatever else. And I was just saying that like the gender doesn't mean a difference to me. I want someone competent working there. If they're a hard
Now, what
worker,
if
that's it.
do you and you do agree that men, even in the average man, is way stronger than the average woman?
Yeah, I like I said, on average, men are definitely stronger than women.
And men's bodies, their bodies regulate temperature way different than women. So women being in like a condition where the house may be, or maybe like, what, let's say 80 something degrees outside. If you're on black tarp, I mean, temperatures can reach up to like 110, 115 degrees. And men tend to handle that stuff better. I'm not saying all men, like,
Right.
mm,
And that's the
take the
problem,
majority.
right? And this is another sophistry thing. When you go back and forth between making a universal claim and a average claim, right? Like this is something Andrew Wilson does a lot too. He'll sometimes hold people to a universal absolute. You have to say across the board this always stands. And he holds them to that. And then later he'll be like, well, I'm just talking about averages. It's just average man, average woman, right? And so suddenly he's not making an absolute claim anymore. And if you guys are not making an absolute claim about men and women, then you agree with me. I'm just saying not everybody fits the box, dude.
So you're basically saying it's subjective,
What is? Gender roles?
like not generals, but the idea that the strongest woman and the strongest man, who's going to be way more stronger, not because like I think so. I think it's mostly because of like anatomy and biology.
No, I was just saying that both of us seem to agree that yes, on average, men are stronger than women, but
Mhm.
there's exceptions, right? That doesn't hold universally. There
Does the
are
exception make the
some
rule?
strong women and there are some weak ass men. Like that's just
Does
how
the
it is.
exception does the exception make the rule, or does it point
No,
out?
I'm just saying it doesn't hold absolutely, which is why rigid patriarchy is bad because you're suddenly birthing people who don't fit your box, yet you're shaming and pressuring people to fit the box, even though they don't.
Well, no. Okay, so when you say shaming people, do you think when I say that men are stronger than women, I'm like being, I wouldn't say like misogynist, but like, would you say that I'd be shaming women because they're not as strong as men, or am I just pointing out the difference?
No, no, no. Sorry. I'm injecting a little more into this conversation. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this because I know that you're like a follower of the Crucible and whatnot. Um, those guys do, right? The red pillars, they do shame women who aren't like feminine and submissive. They do shame men who are like softer and more in touch with their emotions. Maybe you're not doing that now, but that's what I think this form of patriarchy is advocating for.
I think people get really bogged down on semantics, but I think at the same time, people also criticize Andrew because he's somebody who gets bogged down on semantics. Um, it's it's kind of hard to like pinpoint exactly what a lot of people think on the subject, especially like the patriarchy. I think all he's saying is that like sure you can hate the patriarchy, but there's really nothing better to replace it with because of forced doctrine and whatever. Honestly, whatever men want, they could just do it, and there's really nothing that there's at least
Now,
strong men.
let's see. Okay, let's just get into the force doctrine then, because I definitely disagree that
Of course.
um, so the whole idea is right, like men could collectivize and overthrow governments and women can't, right?
Well, okay, so it gets a little deeper than that. It basically all forced doctrine is that men are the grantor of rights. They can take rights away from women. They can also take their rights away from weak men. Kind of see where
Okay.
I'm going with that.
So here's the issue, right? Because it's not just men that grant rights, it's like society as a whole.
Mhm.
Because you don't just need an arm of enforcement, you need a judicial arm, you need a legislative arm to write the laws, to study the laws. You need like intelligent leaders who know how to interpret the laws, which women absolutely can be. There's no reason to think that women are just like way stupider than men, right? So they absolutely can adopt these roles of leadership. Not only that, you don't have a group of men that's an enforcement arm for your society without production, without women having more children. Like you require women to have strong men in the first place. You guys are acting like it's just in a vacuum. Like men just appear out of nowhere and collectivize and like enforce the rights. There's a whole ass system that create these men.
Sure. So my definition of the force doctrine, basically, it just all it means is that like, let's say we had a woman, or the first woman president, right? Now you could say that she's in, um, like she's in a position of authority, right? But at the same time, her what would her enforcement arm be, since she's the commander in chief?
Well, she would use like an army, right?
Yeah,
Which
the military,
could
the army,
could be made up of mostly men and some women,
mostly
right?
men. Yeah. So, and let's say that she, as the president, did something that was like unconstitutional, just to just go in from our society standpoint. Because in other countries, if they wanted to overthrow the government, they would just do it. Here, we obviously have the Constitution. I know other countries have constitutions too, but here we have a constitution where, like, obviously martial law is like illegal. Um, but let's say she called martial law against, her citizens. Now, she personally couldn't say like no, and I honestly don't think a weaker man could honestly also say no if their society decided to turn on them. But a man in this situation, like a group of men collectively could overthrow the government. I'm personally saying that a group of women couldn't overthrow the government because we've never seen it happen ever in society.
Yeah. So the thing is, though, like woman leader or man leader, that could happen, right? And
So
I think you said that. So,
yeah,
for example, Donald Trump right now could just get overthrown, ass kicked by a group of militants. But I
yes,
see what I'm saying is that these group of militants, you're claiming that this would have to be all men. It would have to be purely men collectivizing to overthrow this government, right? When actually a good rebellion would include spies. You could use women for that, right? It would include intelligence agents. You could use women for that. Like, there's no world where you just have a group of men in a vacuum that overthrows society. There's a network that surrounds them and makes them more powerful than just brute force.
question. When I mean, we can even just get into like wars. Name a war where it, like, I mean, if we go back to like the 1800s, right? It was literally just a vacuum of men. None of the women went out to war when the Spartans
No.
went to war. Can you name any
Yep.
army
So
that?
even Spartans, so Sparta was all men, I think, as far as I
Yeah,
know. Like
all men.
the boys, like right off the bat, they trained them to
Hmm.
be military. Like that was their culture.
Yeah,
But
they'd go out for. I mean, they'd go out for years on
the
end.
key, though, to that society standing was that the women were the political leaders of the society while all the men went out to war. If that didn't happen, then their society could have just collapsed from within. The women were the strong leaders while the men went out to fight the battles.
Right, but without the men, they wouldn't even had a
And
society because they
and
just got
without
taken
the
by another
women,
group
they
of.
wouldn't have had a society either. That's
Well,
why
no,
I'm
they would have. No,
it's
they did have a
ridiculous to
society.
say that it's one sex or the other that creates society. Like
No, no, no.
every
That's not what we're
strong
saying. We're
man,
not
it
saying
suckles on his mom's tit when he's like, it's just,
no.
it's so
We get
ridiculous,
that,
dude.
but we're saying that like, okay, name a society where. Okay, I always forget the difference between. Okay, so there's patriarch. Like, there's the patriarchy. Is it egalitarianism? I'm trying to.
Egalitarianism is like sort of what we've aimed at recently in like the modern West, right? Sort
Sure.
of like meritocracy, egalitarianism.
I'm trying to think. It's a society ran by women. That's what I'm trying to go for. There's a
Oh, like a
word.
matriarch.
A matriarchy. Yes, a matriarchy.
Hmm.
Patriarchy, matriarchy.
Yeah,
We've never like. Do you? Is there any society that was
yeah.
founded on like?
And guess
Can
what?
you name?
Matriarchal societies never had birth rate problems because the
But like,
women were
what
in
are the? Can you
control.
name it? Can
Hold
you
on.
have
The
the?
women
Yeah.
were in control of their reproduction, their reproductive selection. So there were not birth rate problems for matriarchies. I don't want a matriarchy, by the way. I'm just pointing that out. So a lot
Yeah.
of the indigenous cultures in the Americas before it got colonized, a lot of their societies had not necessarily matriarchy, but they were called them matrilineal, and it was sort of egalitarian, but the bloodline followed the women. Like the women controlled the reproduction. The men still like did sort more like strength, brute force stuff and whatnot, but it was just more of a mixed process.
Question: would you say like would a leader position, right? Would that have some sense of like authority, like a
Y-
leadership role position? Like
yeah.
let's just say the father of the house, right? Would that come with like a sense of authority?
So, like for my perspective, if there's a child in the house, then the mother and the father both have an authority position over their children.
Well, like in this case, if we're talking like patriarchy, like nuclear family type stuff, would you say like the father, in instance, like has if most, if not all, the authority when it comes to
Well,
like
in a patriarchy, yeah, obviously that's what that is.
okay, I'm just asking questions, and would you
think that's good or bad for society?
That's what I think is bad. I think it's bad for even men's well-being, right? And obviously you've heard enough feminists by now say why they think it's bad for them. So yeah,
Mhm.
I again though, I'm not trying to like take it away from you trad bros. Like you guys do whatever you want, in my opinion,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I'll tell you a couple of examples why I think it's harmful to men if you're down.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
so you know how in court cases for getting kids that a lot of times the mothers come out on top winning those cases.
It's very one sided. Yeah.
So why do you think that is?
I think the court system's kind of painted a bad image on men because I think there was a law back in the 40s or the 50s where like the parental, like all that was already granted to the men. And then I remember after a couple of years, they fought for something. It's like custodial rights or something like that, where like you have to go to court, and then I think they just kind of weigh out. I honestly don't know.
Okay, and like I'm not gonna pretend like this is like a one-to-one correlation or anything, but in my opinion, I think that it's this way because of the way we view gender roles. And it's echoing, even though our modern society is becoming more egalitarian, you know, women are obviously becoming like more feminist, all these things. I think this is echoes from patriarchy because patriarchy tells us that women are nurturers, they're caregivers, right? They run the home, they raise the children, they listen to the husband, whatever. And it also tells us that men are strong, masculine, stoic, aggressive, right? They obviously can do a lot more harm than a woman can or whatever else. So I think these rigid gender roles, the way we've categorized them, is actually what biases the court system to say, well, it's probably in the kid's best interest to be raised by the mother who's supposedly this nurturing caregiver, right?
Yeah. Um. I. I. I guess I can see how that works out. I also don't believe in like the whole like no fault divorce thing. I'm not a big fan of that. Splitting up like families. Um.
Well, uh, that makes me cringe, but let's save it for now. Dude, honestly, like, again, you're the best, like, person in this regard I've ever spoken with. I would love if
Yeah.
we followed each other and like had discussions in the future because yeah,
You
it
know, dude, you're like the one guy who hasn't like muted me and like called me a Nazi yet. So
it's funny. I have vowed to do my best like not to mute anybody. Obviously I will if I have to, but I get muted all the time in orthodox spaces, in trad bro spaces, and I'm never saying offensive stuff. I'm not like playing their little game of like question answer question answer. I'm like giving more in-depth answers and they're like, "No, you need to answer my question." You know, the Andrew Wilson approach, if you will.
I see. That's the thing, though. For some reason, I always try to critique Andrew Wilson, and every time I do, I always find myself going back to like the same. Does it make logical sense? And if it doesn't, like try to find a way to trap that person in that hole. Because man, debating is it's kind of weird. Like I actually like the more I watch Andrew Wilson, the more I actually don't debate people because you have to know so much. And I'm only
Mm-hmm.
18,
Right.
and I'm just trying to like have these conversations with people that are older than me, um, to understand like how to debate, but also how to follow like logical reasoning. And if you can prove me wrong in front of like a bunch of people, hey, more power to you. But if I can prove you wrong and like kind of gain a following, and
See, and I
that's
just
how.
don't think truth is that cut and dry. Like, yes, there's an like absolute reality. There's a, like an objective truth, but I don't think any of us have complete access to it. So this is why like debates are entertaining, but like they don't really dig down into like the hard truths of things. They're just about rhetoric and proving someone wrong or prove like whatever, showing that you can be logically consistent. Like me being logically consistent doesn't mean I'm right at all. It just shows that I can be consistent.
Well, I disagree only because we live in a like almost well not even almost, but we live in a society where a lot of people will tell you some crazy things, um, and they expect you to just kind of believe it because they say it's true. Everybody has their own truth. I mean, reality is not even reality anymore most of the time. I mean,
Well,
I'm not. I don't know if you're too, well versed in like the whole trans stuff, but
yeah,
it gets to a point where
again,
you
we could
have to
talk
kind of
about that later maybe because
yeah
I don't want to like do a scatter shot right now, but
yeah no I agree.
so okay, I'm sure you've heard of the ancient Greek philosophers, right? Like Plato, Socrates,
Yeah,
Aristotle,
Plato,
these guys.
Socrates.
So all of these guys uh, um were like major pillars and foundations for Christianity. And the
Sure.
reasoning that Christians started using to argue for God stemmed from the ancient Greek philosophers. And all philosophy is a love of wisdom, right? We're pursuing truth. We're trying to figure out what's real, what's not, what's true about our reality. The problem with modern day debates is they're again they're akin to sophistry. In Plato's writings, Socrates talks about the sophists, right? That's where this word comes from, is from Socrates himself. And he
Yeah.
talks about how these guys, they took money from people and trained them in rhetoric and trained them how to win debates. Whereas Socrates was, Socratic dialogue, ask questions, try to come to an understanding with the other person, try to figure out some truth together. It wasn't
Yeah.
about showing off. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about all of this. This is why I say Mr. Wilson is a sophist. He's literally taking people into his debate university, training them in rhetoric, training them how to win debates, get dunks on their opponents. It's not about caring about the truth. It's about saying, well, I have the truth. And like, I don't care to investigate it really. I just care to prove it to other people.
Sure. And would you agree or disagree? Let's say like I don't know. Am I allowed to say his name? The H guy, the bad H guy.
Wait, I don't know, man. Like literally, it's only me and you in here. So if it gets taken down, it's whatever. Just
Yeah.
make sure I'm gonna follow you. Let's follow each
Yeah, I
other.
got you. Yeah, there you go, man. I'll even give you some
Pre-
tap.
Appreciate you, dude. Yeah, like that's.
Um,
I don't know why you're getting muted, honestly. W prompt, thanks, Nanya. Appreciate that. If you want to get up here and talk to this guy with me, feel free. Anyway, go ahead.
what's it called? How was I saying? Okay, so let's say like you had a chance to debate that guy before he did all the heinous things that he did, and you had a chance to really change his or critique his worldview. And I think Andrew, he also does some stuff like obviously he baits like come on,
Hmm.
his whole thing is grifting, and that's like the inside joke. Um, Now if you have an opportunity to talk to OnlyFans models, if you had the opportunity to talk to feminists, like, and almost change their worldview by challenging each other, because I've seen him be like challenged before on certain things that he said, but every time that they challenge him, they can't they can't really box him in because he follows a certain
Well,
logical pathway.
at least from what I've seen, the reason that no one can ever put him into a corner is because he refuses to let people criticize his Christian worldview. It always turns into, well, I'm not like given the privilege to talk about orthodox, like I haven't been granted the privilege to talk about orthodoxy, so I can't actually like investigate that with you. But then he turns around and says, well, I have a solid moral foundation and you don't. It's like you don't really have a moral foundation if you're not willing to hash it out and tell me why it's a foundation.
Well, I think he can't really get into like his teachings because that might be like a religious belief. Like I know a lot of
No,
Muslims who
I get
can't
it. I
be in
get it.
certain
But you
spaces.
understand what I'm saying? Like, he uses that as a moral grounding and a foundation, but nobody ever gets to criticize him on it. He gets to back out of it. So
Well, I've
I don't
watched
think
like
he gets to use it as a grounding if he's not gonna like actually explain why it's true.
sure I've watched over like 45 hours worth of like his content. Um, and I could honestly say that like people criticize his orthodox views like crazily, and they always like, especially when he debated Dean and Parker, like they tried to get him for almost like an hour and a half of Christian stuff. I think he doesn't really get into like the ethical part of it, but I think he definitely debates around it, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
that's like if you asked me, do I believe in a Christian God? And I said yes. And then you were like, well, do you believe like abortion's right? And I also said yes. You see how like it's a contradiction? But I think like you
No,
can
not
ask him
necessarily.
like,
There's Christians who are pro-choice.
sure, well, let's say like I believe that like murder was wrong, but I also believed in the death penalty.
Again, that wouldn't necessarily be a contradiction because murder is the unjust unaliving, right? And supposedly the government is justifying with the death penalty.
Sure, okay. But I'm trying to like point out a contradiction in like logic, if that makes sense. Like
So
it'd be
yeah,
logical.
I want to get Nanya in here, but I just wanted to say one more thing real quick. The whole thing with this foundations and the moral grounding that like it's not even just Wilson. It's like this whole movement of trad bros and Orthodox Christians and stuff. They come to the table with this claim of I have a moral grounding, you don't. But it's literally they don't have a moral grounding. They have a claim to a moral grounding that's never been proven ever. It's
Are
just
you
a
are you
claim.
secular? You don't believe in anything?
So it's complicated. Uh, I'm not I'm not your typical like atheist agnostic, but I definitely don't believe in religion. It's pretty complicated. It would take some getting into, but I will
Right.
say
Yeah.
I do believe in like foundations. I believe there's something we're trying to figure out. There is some reality we're trying to discover that includes reasoning, right? Morality, all of these things.
Sure. And like I heard you say objective truth earlier. Do you believe that like things are obviously objectively wrong, or do you believe that
Well,
most things are
so I think there's
subjective?
a objective world, but I don't actually think any of us can purely access it in an objective way, right? This is why people disagree about the shape of the earth, right? There is a true answer there, but like none of us can actually fully express it. Essentially, we're limited to our subjective experience. I want to get Nonya in here. Sorry, Nonya. Go ahead. How old are you?
Hi, I'm 26.
Sweet. What you got?
Are we talking about religion now, or are we talking about the prompt as well?
Let's bring it back to the prompt because we were kind of
Okay.
getting all over the place.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I agree with all of the prompts. I think that patriarchy is directly harmful to men. But I think that like a lot of men still uphold it because it still puts them in a position of power over women. And I think that there are some women that uphold it as well, because they feel like it somehow justifies like their femininity in this world and just like upholding this construct. Um, but I think that men do view women as subhuman, which is why when we simply talk about basic rights as women, men find it to be like this like blasphemous concept, which is why like they're against feminism, when feminism simply is just asking for women to exist in society the same way that other people do.
Yep. So I'm with you. I don't know if you want to engage with Nonya or
Yeah, of course. When you say like basic rights, what do you mean by basic rights?
Yeah, like just like being able to exist as a human, being able to have access to basic necessities, basic resources, be able to express oneself as a human wants to.
What is a resources that like what's a resource that men get that women don't get?
So not necessarily the resource that we don't get, but more so the accessibility to the same resources. So
And
when we
what's
look
that?
at
Like, what's an example for that?
money specifically, we need money in a capitalistic society, and men have more access to it than women do.
Wouldn't don't women do better off in schools than
Yeah,
men?
which
To
also proves my
be
point, right? Women tend to do better in education, but men still get like these higher earning jobs, which just goes to show that it's not based on metric, but based on like men having the privilege over women and being seen to be better leaders in the work field.
I'm gonna let you
would
guys
you
keep
say that?
going. Hold on real
Yeah,
quick. Hey, just anyone in here, I really appreciate you being here. If you know anybody else that like, especially you, if there's any guys you know that would want to come join this discussion, please share it out to them. And if you could tap the likes every once in a while, it helps push it out to more people. Would appreciate that. Anyway, go ahead.
I lost my train of thought. What did I say? I forgot.
I was saying to you that with you bringing that up further proves my point because women tend to do better in education, but men still get the higher earning jobs over women, which shows that it's not based on metric, but based on the fact that they are men and men are viewed to be better leaders than women.
Now, what would be like when you say a higher paying job? What jobs are you specifically talking about?
Yeah, so statistically, men tend to be CEOs or COOs of companies more than women do. And when you look at why that's the case, many of these studies state that because they assume that women will eventually go on to have children and raise families, which is like really like a patriarchal standard because not every woman wants to have children, nor does it mean that having a children can stop you from being great at this specific job. Not to mention that men also go on to have families and children, and they're not being held to the same standard that women are. So why are we like denying women this job based on family structure when men can have the same thing?
I don't think that like they're saying like men are just better leaders. I think that like when you get into like biological differences where like women do have to take more breaks because of like menstrual things or a pregnancy or paternity leave, that's not really something that men can really change or do anything about. Men do typically like to work longer hours, meaning they're probably going to get paid more than women. Men are usually,
So the
I
pregnancy
wouldn't
thing
say,
doesn't actually counter anything, right? Because she already said not all women want to have kids and a family. Some women are career driven and just want to like chase their career goals, and that's it. So the pregnancy aspect actually would not affect the job at all.
Right, of course, but just because like some women don't want to have kids and some women do, like the people who are not having kids, it doesn't stop them from chasing their dreams. You would just be blaming men that you didn't become a CEO.
No, that's not the argument, right? The argument here at hand is that when we look at data as to why men are CEOs or COOs more than women are, it's because they are placing like these gender roles onto women that they haven't even subscribed to. So like you saying that, well, yeah, women get pregnant and have menstrual cycles, therefore men are more reliable. No. It also like a reproductive like system in your body doesn't negate that you will be good at a certain job.
Yeah, and not to mention I could also argue alongside the menstrual cycle thing, right? In my opinion, men don't quite have a grasp over their biological drive to reproduce, right? It's very distracting for men. It often causes them to be inappropriate in the workplace, get distracted from business and hit on women, whatever else. So their biological underpinnings actually would affect their ability to work.
Right.
Um, See, I don't think that's kind of hard to prove. Not only because how would you even get the consensus on
Wait,
how many men?
that's actually not hard to prove. There is large reports over and over and over of CEOs hitting on their secretaries, have making advances on their workers, right? All of these things, like this is not a secret. This is a
I
like
wouldn't say it's a secret, but I don't think that that's how most.
I'm saying, as somebody who makes a lot of biological arguments, I think you should be able to understand that this is true about men.
I can agree to the first point you said, where like yeah, men do make different moves on women in the workplace. But I could also agree that the reason why most CEO or like hiring agents don't hire women in the workplace, or the reason why most men are actually leaving stuff like teaching or places where there's a lot of women in the area, because they get falsely accused for harassment on the workplace.
No. So when we look at why a lot of these jobs, specifically or job career fields, are predominantly one gender over the other, that's mostly due to socialization. So like when women were allowed to actually work and join the work field, they weren't allowed to like be construction workers. They weren't allowed to be in like the factory. They were allowed to be nurses and caregivers. They typically allowed the jobs that women could have originally, along with what they thought would be with feminine. Which is why you're now starting to see, like in the last 40 years, women start to get into these fields that are not so based in like what a woman should do. So that's not the case at all.
Well, we've
But
allowed
also when we talk about false accusations, like the likelihood that's happening is like less than 2%. So it's like you're using like a very very small number to represent why like 350 million people exist a certain way in society.
sure, but I would also say the same thing when you say that there's women nowadays going into certain fields that weren't predominantly women before. I think you're using a very small percentage to prove your point.
What do you mean?
You said that there are women nowadays that are working in spaces that aren't technically like what a woman should be. What are those spaces?
Yeah, so like women in STEM, right? Like that's like a fairly, it's not new, which is why specifics said the last 50 years, right? We start to see women grow in these fields. We're seeing women grow in blue collar jobs. We're seeing women grow in like being in finance fields, because like the accessibility is there, right? Where when you're looking at like in the 1960s or 1970s, where it was like, no, women shouldn't be in these jobs. And the discrimination still
I don't
exists,
think
but I was directly responding to the point that you made about like why women and men aren't in these fields. You place it to be based on false accusations when a lot of people are in these jobs based on socialization.
I think there's a lot more women in blue collar jobs nowadays because men made it a lot easier and a lot more accessible. Because hear me out.
Exactly,
Like
because you're
40
acknowledging that
years
men
ago,
control the power of the work field, which is what I brought up originally. When women were allowed to work,
because
they,
we're inventing
they did not.
things that make it easier to do certain jobs.
No, it's not just that.
No.
So look at the example of World War II, right? When tons of men got drafted for the war, the factory jobs, which were majority men only, suddenly got filled with a ton of women working these jobs to maintain production in America while the men went and fought, right? So these women were absolutely capable of adopting the factory roles and like running the production of society.
Yeah, I don't think I disagree with that, but the part I do disagree with is that when that did happen, like you do realize that they were only allowed to do that because men not only created the factories that they built the guns in, they created the guns that they built.
Yes,
All
like
they did was put bullets
exactly,
and
which means
serve.
that you acknowledge that
I acknowledge
men
that women
have
can work.
that.
I never said women couldn't work.
Hold on, but you acknowledge that men are controlling the accessibility
Yes,
that
I.
women
That's my
have.
entire point.
Okay, so all right. So when you make statements like the reason why women aren't in these fields is due to false accusations, but at the same time you recognize that men control women's accessibility to career fields, do you not recognize the contradiction there?
I recognize that women work, which was the point of you bringing up. Well, when they went to the factories during World War II,
Mhm.
but I don't. No, I'm talking about when he did. But I don't agree with when you say that like men control the workforce. I don't agree with that. I think
You
that
just
men.
said
No, I say
that the
men made it
reason why is
easier.
because men made it more accessible to
No, they
women.
make the work, like the workload, more easier
Hey,
to
I'm
do.
just
They
gonna
created
flip my
stuff like
fan
the
on.
forklift. No, you're good.
Okay.
They created stuff like the forklift. Um, I mean, we've had laborious jobs for millennia, and we've only seen most of those jobs be taken on by men. Not because we
Yes,
don't
but
allow
we've
women to do
seen
it.
these jobs. Yes, what do you mean? We
It's not
see
because
these
we didn't
jobs.
allow them to do it. It's because
So
they just couldn't and they didn't want to.
no, that's not the case. So there's a study that you can read, right? It's called "Women in Construction as Early as the 13th Century." And it's based in modern Italy. And it talks about women participating in infrastructure since like the 13th century specifically. And it talks about how women were erased from these fields, right? Like a lot of people don't know, like
Right?
women.
Because
Let me finish real
quality
quick.
of work,
Like
time of
people,
work, it would take
no,
longer.
no, women were erased from this field because it wasn't seen to be a woman thing, right? Women were denied work. Like I bet, like you brought up men making the forklift. Did you know that a woman created the circular saw? No, right? A lot of people don't know these things. Like, did we know that like the Brooklyn Bridge in New York City, one of the most prominent bridges in New York, was architect and designed by a woman? No,
Yeah, I never
right?
said
Because
women can be
people.
architects. I never
No, but
said
I'm just
that.
saying, like when you make comments like women don't want to be in these fields, no, you have to acknowledge the time
I
period.
said laborious fields.
Again, you're saying that women don't want to be in these fields.
I said
That's not the
laborious
case.
fields.
You're still not listening. Like you're making it seem like this is just something that naturally exists when there's literally a system of oppression behind women in the work field as to why we don't see women in the same fields as men and vice versa.
Can you tell me what percentage of women are in the plumbing industry?
So, by the
Yeah,
way,
I'm not
I looked
negating
up what
that.
she
It's just
said, and it's checking out completely. Like 13th century in Spain, women were in construction jobs. It goes beyond that. Like it looks like there's tons of examples. I'm not looking too deep into it, but I'm seeing a lot of
Right. No,
examples already.
I don't disagree with any of that. But there's a reason why, I mean, the overwhelming majority of men in what was it when were all the skyscrapers built back in New York? I mean, they didn't allow women to do that, not because, oh, we're men and we're
Well,
better than
let me
you, but
just
because we didn't want to put women, you know how many people died building these
Let
so
me
why
just
did they
ask
building these
die
you,
roads,
let
willingly?
me
right?
ask both of you real quick. Can we just agree that it's probably like a little mix of both, right? Maybe on average, there are women who don't necessarily prefer these fields, but also there's been a large socialization of these fields sort of directed at men and not women. And both of
Yes,
these can be
absolutely.
true at the same time.
Yes, absolutely. And because even when we look at like construction equipment, right, specifically people that work outside, a lot of these equipment that's made doesn't consider like the female biology. Right? They don't consider breasts. They don't consider like smaller stature. So yes, but there's a reason for that, right? Like if you socialize something to be a man's job, the likelihood of a woman joining that field will be slim to none. But at the same time, there is discrimination against women that do want to join these fields.
Okay, so can you repeat what you said right before you said that last part?
That is due to socialization. That if you label something a man's job, the likelihood of women joining that field is slim to none.
Okay, what would you deem a woman's job?
So
Just
typically we see social services jobs being filled by women and healthcare jobs being filled by women.
and what would you consider a man's job?
But I guess in this society, it would be something like construction
Okay. And why do you think like that is,
because of socialization and oppression of women.
and not like anything that has to do with biology or
No, because when we
the
look at the construction field
anatomy, the
now,
makeup
like
of
but that's another misconception, right? Is like I think that like yes, typically men are stronger than women. But this idea that like every man is like this 6'5" macho, the
I would never
rock,
say every man that's a
Superman.
monolith and
No, I'm
everybody
just
doesn't make a
saying, like, I
monolith.
think that when we talk about like the anatomy of males versus females, I think that we tend to over exaggerate the strength of men over women. Like when we look at these construction jobs, majority of things are done within a team. Like if you look at OSHA rules,
A team of
as
men.
as a single individual, yeah, sure, whatever you helps you sleep at night. But like when you look at OSHA regulations, the a singular person is not supposed to be lifting things over 50 pounds, which is why they use machinery such as forklifts and cranes. And when things are higher than 50 pounds, it requires a team of people. So like this idea that like men are like not working together as a team, like they have like this individual strength that women don't, it's just false. Because when women join these fields, they also have to abide by the same regulations as the men in that field.
Let's just say a woman did join. I like to use these examples because I mean, without them, society as we know it would be way different. I mean, let's just say that a woman joined a team, just average woman. You could even pick, I guess, the outliers too. Even if we did pick all the outliers, there wouldn't be enough outliers to make up the majority. So I mean, the job just one, it would take probably 2 times as long. Probably wouldn't have been done to the best of its abilities because
Oh,
out of
brother.
both the
Now you're just
sexes.
no. Now you're just going into saying that women can't do the
Yes,
job the same way as men. There's no
no,
way
they
you can
can't.
quantify that.
Yeah,
You
see
can't
this
quantify
this
that.
is where you are treating it like a monolith, right? You're categorizing the entirety of women as being like less capable as than the entirety of men in a certain field, and that's not true. And so if we're gonna just talk averages, then fine. But suddenly you're switching now to talk about it as a monolith, to say that no women on this planet can be as capable as a
Never
man as
said.
a
I
man.
said even if you took the outliers, it still wouldn't make up the majority, which would mean
Well, yeah,
what?
that's what that means. That's kind of ridiculous to say. Like, obviously, taking the outliers is not the majority. Like, I don't know why you're saying that.
Right, but that's like saying, okay, well, we know LeBron's like one of the best among the best, but we're gonna ignore all the biological reasons why he shouldn't play in the WNBA.
I mean,
Say,
but that's what I mean, right? Like the average man is 5'9". LeBron is 6'7". Like that's what I'm saying. Like when you guys talk about like this biological anatomy of males versus females, the average man is not looking like Dwayne the Rock Johnson. The average man looks like a 5'9",
And the
right,
average
right.
physical
man
man on the
We
also,
we
construction
saw
site.
this though. Okay, can y'all at least concede to this point? We saw this when 15-year-old boys, the 15-year-old boys team for some random high school, swept the
It
women's
wasn't
national
even a
team.
real game. Like
It doesn't matter if
they
it's
were
a real
literally
game.
working with them in
We see that
practice.
merit and skills when
No,
put. I mean,
no.
that's why the Olympics even have to be categorized by gender, because if it wasn't, men would
No,
just
but
topple
no, but
every.
that's not the case, right? And this is what I mean, right? Like I think that like a lot of men just think that they're in these positions because they're better than women. Like men are in these positions because of the
Not better,
subjugation of
different.
women.
We're
When we
just
talk
different.
about, hold on, when we talk about sports, right? You understand that women were not always allowed to play sports, and that the original advocacy from women to play sports was to play with men. And they said that no, that we cannot play with women because women's bodies are frail and they can't do certain things. Which is why when women were allowed to play sports, they let them do things like badminton and table tennis. They didn't let them be in combat sports. So like
Oh,
the
we
separation is
know
not
why
based on
women aren't
biological.
able to be in
no,
combat
they
sports.
weren't allowed to. That's what she's saying.
No, I
They
know
were
that there's
never
a
allowed
reason
to
why, because
originally.
men fought for that. They fought for them not to be allowed to. What sport would you want? Like you said, a
What?
six.
Women fought to not be in combat sports, is what you just said?
No,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I said men fought. Men fought for women not to be
Hey,
in combat
and
sports
easy,
because
real
of the
quick
risk.
before you hop in on the convos, can you just verify your age?
I am 19.
All right.
The risk of, I mean, we see men knock out men to almost the point of death. What would you think would happen if a woman got in there with less body fat, less bone density? It doesn't make sense. Women have always been able to challenge men, at least in the last 30, 40, 50 years, but they
Oh,
haven't
brother.
because they don't want
Okay.
to.
Here's the thing. I want to redirect it
Oh,
slightly. Well, actually, easy if you wanted to add to this convo first, and then I'll redirect it.
so what are actually? I kind of joined just recently, so I'll let you go ahead.
Okay.
You're good.
So what I wanted to say was that I already agreed with you right off the bat of this conversation, right? That like on average, men are physically stronger than women, right? On average. So that doesn't follow though from there that men are better leaders, that men are more intelligent, that men are more like humble and wise, all of these other virtues. Like physical strength is but one aspect of a human character. We value way more than just physical strength. So again, in a partnership, for example, just because the man may be stronger than the woman, that doesn't mean that he's suddenly more capable of leading their lives completely and leading the entire relationship, right? She could be much smarter than him in many fields.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, I can agree that like not everything boils down to strength, but when we're talking about like
Oh,
force,
sorry. I have to thank Nonya real quick. I really appreciate the gift.
Oh, of course.
This is really new to me. So I appreciate all you guys being here, by the way. If you know anyone else that wants to come talk, send it their way. Yeah, just appreciate you guys. Go ahead, we.
um, I mean, yeah, when it comes down to like relationships, of course, like it's not about the strongest person, but I do think that a lot of women do pick the man that they want to be with based on physical strength and how well he can protect my
All right,
family.
you're changing the argument, right? We're not talking about like interpersonal relationships. We're talking specifically
But
about
he
like.
brought up interpersonal relationships.
That's true. I
But
did. But we can. But that goes for society as well. We right
Even
like
society.
as far as women leadership, as far as them being at STEM or whatever else, right?
What do you think
but
stopping
he
like
but he doesn't acknowledge that all of these points that he's bringing up is due to socialization through the patriarchy.
when you say
Like,
socialization to the patriarchy, what do you mean by that?
yeah, like these are things that we believe in as standards and behaviors and practices because the patriarchy states that this is how men should act and this is how women should act. So when
And
you're
how do you
making
think
the
men how do you
argument,
think men should act?
I don't believe in gender roles at all. I think that people should just exist, right?
Yeah,
However they
she's.
please.
I think that what she's trying. I think I'm not going to try and speak for her, but I think that what she's trying to say is that you might believe in these things because you asked her about what that means and she tried to define it for you, and then you said that she inherently believes that, but no, I don't think she does. She's just explaining what she means by being socialized to the patriarchy.
Yeah, I don't believe in the patriarchy.
I never said you believed in a patriarchy. I was just saying that our first of all, wait, you live in America, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty patriarchal here.
Right.
What would you replace the patriarchy with?
Probably with an egalitarian society.
Where men and women are treated equally.
Yes.
So you wouldn't mind being sent off to war through the draft.
Well, I don't agree with war. I don't think anybody should be sent to war.
Yeah,
Well, do you
and
agree with
we real quick.
the draft?
So the draft, by the way, it has been changed such that almost anyone can get out of the draft if they want. You still have to sign up for selective service, but you can even get out of the draft just by a moral. Oh, I forget what they call it. It's like a moral reason, like you're just against war and you're appealing to like some spirituality or religion to get out of the draft, even as like an 18-year-old man.
And you think that's good for society or bad for society?
I don't think
It's
we
good.
should force
Nobody should be
people
at
to
war.
fight wars. The only
True, like war is not a good
yeah,
thing.
yeah.